So the big question is this: how do most agents who don't have access to the secrets that the top agents in our industry hoard to themselves grow and prosper in today's real estate environment? That's the question. And this video podcast is the answer. I'm Pat Hyben, and welcome to Real Estate Rockstars. And now for the review of the day. Got a 5-star review from Sean Haar. Sean says, very helpful as a new agent. This podcast has provided me with a lot of great information and helped me stay motivated. 6 deals closed, another 6 under contract in my first 3 months. Thank you for all the resources that you provide. You are gold for anyone with a strong drive and willingness to hustle. Thank you, Sean, and congratulations on your 6 sales, brother. That's going to have you on a show sometime. Keep the comments coming, guys. I love them. And remember, I eat feedback for breakfast, so give me a 1-star review if you want, or a 5-star review if you want. I don't care. And the more reviews we get, the better guests we get. So please, subscribe first, and then leave us a review or wherever you're listening. All right, Rockstar Nation, I got a good guest today. Mr. Silvio Petriello is on the line from New York City, and we're going to talk about something we don't talk a lot about here on the show, but I think even if you don't get into it or are not into it, it's something that you need to understand and grasp, and that is commercial real estate and kind of how it differs from residential and what you need to know and what you might want to know if you want to get into it or compare it to what you're doing there. So anyways, without further ado, Silvio, welcome to Real Estate Rockstars.
Thank you, Pat. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I'm excited to be a guest on the show.
Hey, Silvio, why don't you kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself so they get to know you better?
Sure. I've been with CBRE for 20 years. I'm a vice chairman. I specialize in helping hedge funds and private equity firms in their office space needs, in a summary. So when a hedge fund or a private equity firm is looking to relocate, renew their lease, expand, or contract, we help them execute that.
Simple enough. And how long have you been doing this?
20 years. This is my 20th year at CBRE.
Wow. And so are you, do most of these companies, they lease, right? They don't buy buildings, or do they?
It's a good question. I think historically they have leased. They all have an appetite to buy, but given the nature of their size relative to the size of the assets in New York City, it becomes very challenging and difficult. And then to operate the building is also another challenge. But recently, I would say in the last year, we've had more clients looking to acquire buildings for their own occupancy and investments, and are willing to take the risk on the remaining vacancy that they don't occupy in that building.
Do you think that's because more people are moving money into hedge funds and private equity funds, and so they're busier, they have more money, or is it just what do you think? Why do you think that is? I mean, 20 years is a long time to be doing it. And then when they suddenly start saying, "Hey, I want to buy instead of rent."
Yes, I think the capital that the private equity firms and the hedge funds are managing are at all-time highs, and the cost of rent in New York City is at an all-time high. So I think that's a combination of the arbitrage between rent and ownership and the ability to allocate some of the funds into the real estate pool via the occupancy of an owned asset by the hedge fund or the private equity firm.
Very good. Okay, so like last 12 months, what sort of business have you done? Like, I guess you have to, it's a little different from residential. Like, how many leases have you done? What have the total numbers been?
So last year, 12 months, last year was our best year as a team. We closed 72 deals, which is very, very large amount of volume for commercial real estate. Unless you have a team of 25, 30 people, we have about 8 people now. And the average, I would say, is probably in the 20 to 30 range. So we did 72 deals. We're more of a high volume
What the 20
business.
to 30 range, what's that mean?
20 to 30 deals.
Oh,
So just to give you a perspective,
okay.
that's right. Just to give you a perspective, if you're in the residential side,
Yep.
not saying it doesn't take long, but within a 3 to 6 or 6 to 12 month period, you can sell houses or apartments. The commercial process could take anywhere from 3 to 6 years. So your pipeline is very deep and long, and the longevity of that pipeline is very different than residential. The transaction also can take, where a residential transaction can take 3 months to 6 months. The commercial transaction on a lease, that process could take I would say perhaps 6 to 12 months just to execute the deal once they've even secured the space.
Yeah. And then you get paid your commission is based on the total amount of the lease, right? So if they sign a 10-year lease, then they add that all up, that 10 years, and you're based on that.
Right. It's a little different in so a house, a residential broker would make anywhere, I guess, from 4 to 6%. Is that right? 4 to 6% on a sale, and they split it up between the buyer and the seller's agent. In the commercial side, it's a descending scale, so it's a higher percentage that goes down over time. So you get paid a percentage of every year. So if it's a 5-year deal, you get a certain amount. If it's a 7-year deal or a 10-year deal, the longer the term, the higher the price, and the larger the square footage. Obviously, the larger the fees.
So you might get like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or something like that. 5%.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. 4% the second year, 3%, 2%, and then the last year you get 1%. And that's just, you're getting paid to kind of keep in touch, make sure they're happy, that sort of thing. You're not managing it, but you're just, still involved if they need anything.
That's right. The client management over that, assuming you do a 10-year lease, the average lease is about 10 years. So you can see 5-year leases or potentially 15-year leases, depending on the size of the organization and the amount of capital that they have to invest so that they can protect the investment and have an amortization period. Varies by size and stability of that entity. So if they have some good range around how many employees they're going to have over a period of time, and they can accommodate that growth rate, they'll do longer term transactions with options to expand or contract and renew in that building, so they can house their people there for the decade. So the real challenge is how to maintain those relationships over that 10-year period to retain the client. And, that comes with just keeping them apprised of what's happening in the marketplace, having some discussions around their business. A lot of client entertainment is still very active in our space.
Yeah. So okay. So that makes sense. So like, what would you say your average deal is, like total, like what's it cost to rent for your average client space in New York City?
So in the private equity hedge fund world, they typically, not all of them, but they typically, some of the more seasoned ones, have an appetite for some larger, higher priced rent, because they're looking to take some of the nicer buildings in space overlooking Central Park, having a Park Avenue address, a Fifth Avenue address. And today the cost of new construction has been much higher than it has been. So the average rent could be in the close to $100 per square foot range, which is the highest in the country, outside of Silicon Valley. That can be competitive, but even on a global scale, it's one of the highest rents. So,
So if I have $100 a square foot, if I have 1,200 square feet, which is not a very big spot, 1,200 square feet is a basic office, you're talking 100 grand a year, right?
right. I would use like a 10,000 square foot, which is the
10,000.
average.
So,
Yeah, the
so
average floor plate size in New York. $1 million for 20 to 30 employees.
TribeOfMillionaires.com. Guys, write that down. Rockstar Nation got a free special offer for you. Now, I've just written a book, and it's just been published. Co-authored it with David Osborne, who's been on this show multiple times. If you don't know David, he is one of the top execs at Keller Williams Real Estate, was personally mentored for the last 2 decades by Gary Keller himself, and he's in all kinds of businesses. His bio and explanation and everything is in this book. But anyways, David and I got together. We decided to write a book. We called it Tribe of Millionaires. And I guarantee you it's going to change your life. To find out more, just go to tribeofmillionaires.com. We're going to give it to you absolutely free. Only thing we ask in return is, of course, number one, you pay the shipping. Not a big deal. But number two, that you go on Amazon and write us a review. We're really looking to get an incredible amount of reviews. And because of that, we're giving this book away for free. Go to tribeofmillionaires.com today. Hey, real estate agents and rock stars. If you're getting value out of the content in this episode, make sure you like the video and subscribe to this channel. Also, click the little bell icon to be notified about upcoming episodes. And I would also love it if you left a comment and shared the most impactful tips and tactics you've learned from the knowledge shared in this episode, or even maybe make a suggestion requesting a topic of what you'd like to learn in future episodes. I welcome any feedback below. Now, back to the episode. $1 million a year to house 20 to 30 employees. So that ain't bad getting paid, 5%, 4%, 3%, 2%, right? Because you're, fat check. So let's talk about that. So and they're from rentals, guys. That's the thing. So, right. Not sales even. So, let's talk a little bit about like why you decided to go into commercial real estate versus residential. Most of our audience is residential. Can you kind of touch on the differences between the two?
Yes, I think there's a little bit of a business difference. It's less emotional, although it can be at times, and it's more of a business transaction, not a personal transaction. And I spent the first 3 to 4 years out of college at Arthur Andersen, and as a CPA. So I had I worked on a lot of real estate transactions as a real estate advisor and consultant to some of the large landlords here in New York City, and on a lot of the acquisitions and understanding the internal rate of returns and how debt was used and how limited and general partners were involved in these transactions. And I always had a real interest in commercial real estate in New York City, but in the fourth year, I had a real desire to get onto the front office sort of side, the sales side of it, and the transaction side versus behind the scenes on the advisory and consulting side after the asset was acquired or during the due diligence phase. And I went into the commercial side to represent those tenants. And I think having an understanding on the capital markets, the landlord's position, and a lot of the details of having that earlier experience, understanding how commercial real estate works, gave me a little bit of an advantage starting out as a commercial real estate broker in New York City. Even with that advantage, keep in mind that there's about 350 million square feet in New York City. It's by far the largest office stock on the planet. Park Avenue alone, which I'm looking outside right now, is about 28 to 30 million square feet. And you've got just about 50 buildings, about 10 blocks. That's almost the size of Chicago. So it's a very large market. It's a very large market. We've got about 4,000 brokers. So it's a product. It's a market that you really have to understand the product, and that takes a long time for a new broker to come in, is to learn which buildings, what the rents are, what the square footages are, who the owners are. There's a tremendous amount of detail and information that's necessary, and it's very hard to get lucky.
And so how do you train your newbies to get business? How did you get business when you first started? What's the plan like if I'm saying I want to be a commercial broker? What advice?
Well, with technology today, things are a little bit different than 20 years ago. We didn't, if you think about just 20 years ago, there were no BlackBerries, and, iPhones were, we used the word BlackBerries. We were using fax machines. Email was very limited. You would use a station with a computer that you can send emails from, but it was really the old-fashioned phone. And in New York, prior to 9/11, we had to literally walk the buildings up and down from the top floor to the first floor and create our own database of who's occupying floors. So as a first generation, Italian here, my parents came from Italy. I was in New York City, did not have one single relationship, and didn't have any real connections or contacts, and built, the majority, if not the entire business in the first 5 years through classic cold calling, taking a Dale Carnegie class and learning how to get the old-fashioned sales, rebuttals, and getting someone on the phone to ask them for their time. You weren't asking for money; you were asking for time, which could be a much larger currency in different situations, right? So today, the world has changed dramatically. Where even us, as we continue to business develop, the young crowd that's coming in, it's an email canvas. I think there's a lot more resistance to get on a phone, the younger crowd. So I think there's a tremendous amount of emailing with information and data that they have at their fingertips, which we also use now. The research of knowing, and now there's database that we have a proprietary database that tells you who's on every floor. And then the deals that are being closed, you've got more intelligence. So it's less of a black market where information's more readily available, and
it tells you like when their lease is up and everything?
That's right. It gives you when their lease is up. It tells you what deals have been closed, what they paid, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little easier than it was in the past where you had to keep your own database.
So you could basically call them and be like, hey, your lease is up in a year. I got this other space that I think you'd like.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do to specialize in the private equity space? I mean, why wouldn't you be a junkyard dog and just rent to everybody and anybody no matter what they were? How does it benefit you to specialize in one thing?
Well, I think sort of the world is sort of consolidating and being converted into what I would call category killers. I think everybody today, if you just think about doctors and lawyers and all types of specialists, if your foot breaks, you want to go to a foot doctor. The generalization of services is being diluted and watered down. So the value that we provide in having a depth of 1,000 transactions over the decade on the team, understanding the user mentality, understanding the profile, the criteria, how the decision making is done, who the C-level suites are making the decision, the power of the founder, oftentimes one person who's very wealthy and very smart, how they make decisions, how they want to see deals presented to them, and then more importantly, the product that, because we're so active in the, call it 50 buildings in New York, the limited amount of high-end buildings, we're very familiar with all the availability, all the trades, all the data, and those landlords. So we have an edge on market expertise, product expertise, and then also just the client management of it. And it's a very small niche circle in New York City with the client base. So the majority of the wealthy finance people know each other, and they all live in the same sort of circle. their summer homes. They all know each other. So there's a lot of value to the credibility and the references that we get from others, and the branding of what we do. So the specialization has been a real advantage to the clients and a real advantage to us.
Yeah, makes sense. And so how many deals of the 72 that you did would you say were in-house versus cooperating with another broker?
Well, it's very rare that you don't have two brokers on a transaction. So there's always a buy side and a sell side. Every landlord, the majority of the landlords in the Class A space are engaging firms to represent them. So most firms have two different groups. One's a tenant representation group, and one is a landlord group. And some brokers dabble in both. Our business is predominantly tenant representation. So oftentimes you're negotiating with another broker from another firm, or a broker from your firm that is representing that owner. If you're renewing in the middle of a renewal discussion and negotiation with, you may have the opportunity to have a direct conversation with the owner on that negotiation, where there's only one fee being paid to you. But the fees are not sort of split up there. It's not like residential, where I think if you sold the house yourself, or the residential apartment, it's one full fee, or they're splitting it with two people. There's sort of a market fee for the buy side and a market fee for the sell side.
And if you do both, you only get one. You don't get both.
That's exactly right. So there's not a large incentive to not have another broker. The only savings would be to that landlord.
Why do you think they do it like that versus the way that they do it in residential?
I think they try to keep sort of the independence on who's representing who, and not get and not have a misalignment of interest, so that it keeps the sort of the fiduciary with each party that you represent.
Right, because then you're not then you're not angling towards doing it in house because you make more money.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, actually, right?
Yeah.
It makes more. They
may want to change it in the residential side.
Well,
sorry, guys.
There's a lot of talk about making. For years, I think the attitude of the residential agent was commercial agents need to be more like residential agents, right? Commercial agents need to get an MLS. Commercial agents need to, co-op more, because there are a lot of commercial. You don't have to cooperate in the commercial world, but in the residential world, it's pretty much a given that you're going to cooperate with other brokers. And so what I've seen lately is that tide is turning a little bit. Now there's a big push for residential agents to be more like commercial agents, in the realm of, do we not need an MLS? Can we sell this in-house? Can we not split the commission? Can we do letters of intent instead of having to write a 40-page contract? What do you think about that?
Well, I do think there's still off-market deals. I mean, I'm in the middle of a bunch of off-market deals now where, it was not listed on the MLS, and I think just having the intelligence on the landlord and the tenant, putting together those transactions, may or may not save the landlord and the tenant some fees, but it does create an opportunity for that landlord and a tenant that otherwise may not have existed in a on-market transaction.
And so just to get to curiosity, and I know you've been at it, if that was last year, your last 12 months, you said that was your best year ever, right?
Yes.
And 72 deals. And would you say, what would you say your, we like to call it ECI, ego commission income. What would you say your GCI was on those 72 deals, like total commissions added up together?
Well, it's a team. So there's 8 to 10 people if so on the team. So I think the aggregate commissions is is when you kind of look at the deals on the average, I would say that when you think about those deals and you break down each individual deal and the number of deals you lost and the probability of making deals with the execution of how many deals you make and how many deals you need to get going at once to make those types of deals and number of deals. And if you average it out over a 3-year or 5-year period, it's very hard to take into context that, on 72 deals with 8 to 10 people, it's north of 8 figures. But you got to understand that if you kind of break that all out, a lot of the monies are sort of earned and accrued in different years. It's just when they all close that you're kind of getting the benefit of the revenue in that year.
Hey, real estate rockstars, this is Pat Hyben, and before we jump back into today's content, I want to tell you about an extraordinary offer from an extraordinary company. I'm talking about My Outdesk. If you haven't heard of My Outdesk, basically they're a virtual assistant company, a VA company that specializes in virtual assistants for real estate agents. Yeah, I'm talking about transaction coordinators, marketing assistants. I'm talking about ISAs, inside sales agents that prospect thousands and thousands of seller leads and buyer lead follow-ups. I mean, these guys are trained in this stuff specifically. You're not using a company that doesn't know or understand real estate sales. 4 out of 5 of the top teams in the U.S. use My Outdesk for their virtual assistants. And because I know the owner, Daniel Ramsey, I've known him for over a decade, and I know how awesome and incredible this company is and how it saves agents thousands and thousands of dollars every single week and makes them thousands and thousands of more every single week, we're going to give you a $400 coupon off of your first month of a virtual assistant and give you a free book entitled Scaling Your Business with Virtual Professionals. So you can read it and look into it before you decide anything. It's called Scaling Your Business with Virtual Professionals. And you can get it real easy. All you got to do is text the word Hyben, H-I-B-A-N, to 31996. That's H-I-B-A-N to 31996. And download your free book, Scaling Your Business with Virtual Professionals. And don't forget to mention also that you get a $400 discount, which will give you a coupon for that when you download the book. Thank you, guys, and I hope you enjoy and make a ton of money using My Outdesk. Hey, real estate agents and rock stars. If you're getting value out of the content in this episode, make sure you like the video and subscribe to this channel. Also, click the little bell icon to be notified about upcoming episodes. And I would also love it if you left a comment and shared the most impactful tips and tactics you've learned from the knowledge shared in this episode, or even maybe make a suggestion requesting a topic of what you'd like to learn in future episodes. I welcome any feedback below. Now, back to the episode. Right. So someone in the like yourself of that, let's say it's 10 million bucks, after you pay your agents, pay your expenses, all that net to you, well, what's your profit margin, would you say?
Right. So commercial also works a little bit different where, you kind of look at a lot of the other firms where I know I listened to your podcast with the Keller Williams or the Douglas Ellimans and all the other firms where they have certain caps, and then you go to certain percentages. The splits on commercial and residential are very different as well.
Tell me about
the commercial. So the commercial is it's pretty basic and consistent amongst the brokerage firms. Some have some tweaks to the model, but the majority of the firms start out with sort of a 50-50 split on the model, and you don't pay for a lot of the expenses. So we don't pay for our phones, our office space, our assistants, or a lot of the departments and a lot of the service lines of marketing and research, et cetera, et cetera. So the company, is your partner. So CBRE is your partner. After you make a certain amount of dollars, you get a waterfall hybrid of a larger piece. So after a certain amount of dollars, that you bring in, the next tranche you go to, 55, 45, or 60, 40. So everybody's got this incentive and waterfalled approach that the more you make, the more you keep. But if you stay within those, if you stay in the underneath the cap, then you're still at the 50-50 break. So that's a pretty basic model amongst all the brokerage firms.
That's interesting that it's pretty, that you would say that, because a guy in the business 20 years in residential, if you were in a business in residential real estate for 20 years, you would probably be on your third, maybe fourth company by now. And that's just how residential agents roll. It's very odd. You say, okay, I've been with CBR, or, I've been with Coldwell Banker, Richard Ellis for 20 years. So it seems to me like you don't have the hyper competitive market where we're seeing now in residential real estate, where new companies are popping up, new splits are popping up, new ways to do business, new ways to make money, and there's a war going on between brokerages, and you're not seeing that in the commercial space, huh?
That's right, Pat. I would say that that's a very large difference between the residential and the commercial side. The clients are individuals, and the clients on the commercial side are companies. So you could have one client with one individual family that's purchasing or selling real estate that's very mobile for that residential broker, that no matter where they hang their shingle, and they can do it every single year, that relationship is very personal. While you have still the same individual relationships on the commercial side, oftentimes there are anywhere from 2 to 5, and depending on the complexity of a transaction, you can have 7 to 10 people work on a transaction. And you can also have the chief financials officer, the chief operating officer, the general counsel, the CEO, the CAO, a facilities person. So you can have a half a dozen people on each side of the ledger between your client and your firm. So the connectivity of the deals, they take a long time, and there's it's very hard for brokers to bounce around. And while they do, there's a massive 1 to 2 year, 3 year potentially curve that has to get you kind of back and running, because you got to learn the systems, because they don't use a MLS system like the residential. And you can't really be an independent agent, because of the demands for a corporation, regardless of what industry you specialize. The demands really need the resources. So I would say in the up markets and down markets in the 2008-9 market, we saw a lot of movement in firms looking to acquire brokers. There's always a recruiting period going on, but also the cost to recruit brokers is very expensive, because if you pay them on a trailing 2 to 3 year period, it's very expensive for them to recruit. So the talent war is there, but it's not severe, and it's not on an annual basis. If you look at most of the successful brokers in our industry, if you see more than 2 to potentially 3 different firms on their resume, it's very rare that they've been successful, because they bounce around for that upfront commission check, and then their revenue kind of flattens out. So every 3 years they're bouncing to make that, sort of upfront check to join that firm, but they lose clients along the way. So they're always kind of building their business. And there's just more longevity and more security for the retention of brokers, and it has to be really worth their while to move. So you do see some very large brokerage teams or brokers go to other firms for other reasons, but there's a large check associated with it. But it's not so many moves.
Signing bonuses. So they're kind of like stockbrokers, or a sense, you know what I mean? Like if
the wealth managers.
And then they get my guy has a bunch of my money. He was at one company, and then another company paid him like some astronomical amount of money to move him and his team over, like a signing bonus, like a crazy signing bonus. And so that happens, you're saying, in commercial, and it never happened in residential till Compass Real Estate came around, which is from New York City, and they started paying, like 3 to 4 times the company dollar that you would pay to them, meaning on a split, for agents to move, and so that started happening in the commercial. I mean, in the residential for the first time ever in the last couple of years.
Right. Compass is growing rapidly in New York City. I mean, I would say they're in a good way, disrupting the residential business by being a little more commercial savvy. You can see that they're buying large teams of sophisticated and successful brokers and adding them to their technology platform. So, disruptors are kind of short-term pain, long-term gain for an industry. But it's very hard to, there's a balance of that signing bonus and that retention and movement of client. You have to make sure your clients are mobile. If your money wasn't with that wealth manager, that check wouldn't be there. So that, it's a personal relationship. It's not a corporate relationship.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's moved twice for signing bonuses over the last 20 years or so. I've been with him, and I didn't even pay attention. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're moving your money here. It's going to be a little bit of pain in the ass because you got to sign some more forms or whatever." But, I was like, okay, whatever. But I've watched it happen, and I've talked to him about it, and I know he got some fat checks for it. But I didn't care because it was still him,
Yes.
So I guess the same thing in commercial, and I guess the same thing happens with commercial. I mean, I've rented space several times, and I've used the same guy each time. So it kind of makes sense. And he's, in touch throughout the year on, how's the lease going, So I can see how you're probably more in touch than you would be if you just sold a house and then just, went on to the next deal.
You're very active, and you try to get all your clients together. I'm hosting, I host golf events. You're taking them to the Knicks games. You're going to Yankee games. You're hosting dinners. There's just it really truly becomes a friendship. But because if you think about over a 20-year period, you get, if you had a client for 20 years, you get 2 deals to 4 deals at best, unless you have someone who has a unless you have a multi portfolio around the country where you're doing deals in other markets, which is also something that we're doing, multiple markets in different cities. And then on the private equity business, they own companies in the portfolio business. We're really able to utilize having the largest firm in the world, almost 90,000 people with every major service line. We're able to really handle and add value to the real estate as it relates to that investment they're making on that portfolio company that could effectuate a larger sales price if it increases their EBITDA. So you can be creative in the real estate of existing clients that you're doing their leasing for in New York or other markets by helping them on their investments as well.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Well, Silvio, this is fascinating. I love talking to people in different lines of real estate and different areas. And you did a great job of explaining a little bit about your world and how it differs and how it is. And I appreciate you coming on and doing that. As you know, Silvio, everybody that comes on brings with them a free gift. And what we do is we give this out to everyone listening. And I'm going to put this in Silvio's show notes. I'm going to make this real easy, guys. I'm not going to have you spell out his last name. I'm going to just put it on hybendigital.com/Silvio, SILVIO, hybendigital.com/Silvio, SILVIO. Silvio, what's your free gift today?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll send you I'll work on deleting a lot of stuff, but I think the CRMs are really critical. And we've invested a lot of time and money on our CRM as it relates to what we call the lead tracker and how we track our leads by team member and the details that go into each individual lead and what stage they're in and the information. And also our deal tracker from the day you meet someone to the day you close a lease. Every single cycle and every single phase, we have every different phase for every single deal, and we have the notes and the documents from every single transaction and client. So I can share that, obviously, with a blank slate with you for any of the new junior brokers or seasoned brokers that are in commercial real estate or looking to get into commercial real estate, so they can have a little bit of a roadmap on how to track deals.
Yeah, that's perfect. That'd be awesome. I'm curious to see that myself. So guys, what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to put it on hibandigital.com/Silvio, and I'm also going to put it in the Agent Success Toolbox, which can be found on hibandigital.com/toolbox, or simply texting the word toolbox to 444-999. You'll get that roadmap, that checklist, along with all the other items of utility that agents have brought as they come on the show. Just text the word toolbox to 444-999. Silvio, this has been a blast. Listen, next time I'm in New York City, I will definitely look you up and we can get together and break some bread.
That'd be a lot of fun, Pat. I appreciate having me on.
I want you to think about the word toolbox. What is a toolbox? A toolbox is a box full of tools that you use to build something great. At Real Estate Rockstars, we've created our own free toolbox. So everybody that comes on the show as a guest brings a tool with them, and we plow them all into this toolbox, and we give it away for our viewing audience to basically use as they wish. Everything we put in there is an actionable item that can be downloaded, can be printed, can be used immediately. And we got things like scripts and dialogues, checklists for teams, checklists to keep agents accountable, referral forms that are filled out at settlement to get referrals by your buyers and sellers. Everything you could think of that you could use on a regular basis about real estate is included in this toolbox. And it's helping agents worldwide sell more houses and make their jobs a lot easier and processes much more efficient. And the thing is, it's absolutely free. All you got to do is go to hibandigital.com/toolbox or text the word toolbox to 444-999. That's toolbox 444-999. Do it now. Rockstar Nation, thank you for listening to Real Estate Rockstars. Listen, I need a favor. If you find this free content helpful, if you find our downloadable items from each guest helpful, please, I need you to pull out your pointing finger. Yes, the one finger that points at people, and hit subscribe. Yes, subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the better we look in the ratings, and the easier it is to get guests like Robert Kiyosaki, Barbara Corcoran, all the players that are on $1 million listing in the different cities. All that stuff makes it easier the more subscribers we get, so please subscribe. And listen, there's a lot of places you can leave comments. There's a lot of places you can like. We're on Facebook. We have an Instagram page. Instagram page is I am Pat Hyben. The Facebook is Real Estate Rockstars Radio. Feel free to leave us comments there. The most popular form of commenting seems to happen on YouTube. Yes, for whatever reason, it's a very open environment. So just go to YouTube and go to Real Estate Rockstars Radio. Leave us comments there. Some of them we will read on the show. We love your feedback. So thanks, guys, and I hope you are having a great day. Oh, and also, listen, if you're going to subscribe and you haven't already left a review on iTunes, please do that too. Have a great day, and thanks so much, Rockstar Nation. I really appreciate you.